there are going to be times as parents where we watch our kids making decisions or on the verge of making decisions that we know they can't grasp the consequences of.
That.
Sometimes you have to let them make the mistakes, but then there's also
the big
there's also times we got to be able to step in and go, you don't understand the decision you're about to make.
Yeah, I've heard it said this way, and I've always thought this is a great rule of thumb, is when you have a newborn, you're basically doing everything.
Yes.
And then as they get older, they need you hold my hand in the parking lot.
That's right.
You don't talk, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And the goal of parents is, as the kids get older, we want to have more influence because we're going to have less control. We don't have any control other than what they give us.
Yeah.
And so that's what we need to be working on.
We're just human beings that are trying to figure out how to be more like Christ as we raise our kids. Some of us just have had more help along the way, or resources, or understanding. And I think that that's where I would have been able to forgive and give grace to my parents for their mistakes and not hold them to account. Because I'm like, they really were doing their best with all the trauma they went through.
Just because I don't believe or agree doesn't mean I can't learn from you.
Why did you have to bring that up?
Okay, that one I'm super embarrassed about.
Do you like me?
Do I like you?
Yeah.
As an individual or as a podcast?
As a person.
No, I like you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I don't have any interest in appearing to be stronger than I am.
I ain't bow to Nebuchadnezzar's statue. He gonna lead. You feel me?
How do we love people who see the world differently than we do?
What would it look like if we truly loved all of our neighbors? Could listening to their stories be the first step? This is Seacoast Church, and there's way more to talk about.
All right, well, thank y'all for sitting down with me to talk some. The tissues are over there. Would you guys agree with, so the kids are either freshly back in school or they are getting ready? And so I wanted to just have a conversation on parenting. But then I really do think that this conversation, I'd go so far as to say, if you're a parent, maybe let your kids listen to this so they can understand how hard it is to have such a deep love for these little rascals that walk around with our hearts. Would y'all agree, would y'all relate to this, that kids are the biggest blessing and the biggest source of pain? My heart has hurt so bad for my kids that my mind would go, would it be easier if I had never had kids? And then I think about it for 5 seconds later and like, nope, I wouldn't want to be without any of my kids.
Totally.
It's just the crazy, deepest thing ever.
I agree. I would say that statement is completely true. I've never felt such a wild, deeply connected love. And then also when they're in pain, I was like, wow, I didn't realize how much vengeance I have in my heart, either towards other children or people that have hurt them. I was like, tell me their name. Tell me their parents' name. I'm like, this is not good. Lord, heal my heart. Heal my mind.
I really, Mother Bear is a thing. Because Priscilla has been talking before, and I'm like, Priscilla,
I'm fine.
The girl you're talking about is in the 2nd grade. Do I need to report you? Are you going to go to the school? She'll catch herself. She's like, oh, well, I'm an adult. This is a kid.
Yes, that is a real thing. And I do find myself going, wow, I am vengefully angry. Lord, for real. I'm like, help me, Lord. And also, don't let me near the school. So.
I'm going to put you on the spot here,
Do it.
Andi. If you had to articulate, because I would say there's definitely something unique that mothers have with their kids. How would you articulate that? Because you know your husband and how great of a father he is. You have something unique, though. I think maybe you disagree.
Yeah.
As a mother, there's something special going on, and I don't know if it's just strictly connected to 9 months. Of being connected physically?
Yeah, I actually do think that's a huge part of it. I would love to hear adoptive parents answer this question too. I think that would be super cool. But I know for me, it is this weird connection that you can't explain. You guys can relate to this, even in the funny things where, okay, as dads, you could do certain tasks for your kids, but who do they go to? They ask, when you're literally standing next to each other, you're like, hello, I am cooking dinner, I'm doing something else. else. They're like, yeah, but I need you to do this. You're like, ah! And I sometimes actually wonder if that is back to the innate connection somehow, some way. But like, even when they're in your womb for 9 months, for me, like I felt and knew every single one of them, parts of their personality before. And so I had to like, that was an interesting thing as my husband, and I would love to hear your guys' perspective on that too, got to know them in a different way than I knew them already in a way.
Yeah. And I think that is why when Priscilla experienced a miscarriage, I was sad for her and sad that the excitement was over. She mourned the loss of the kid that she was already connecting with.
Yeah.
I didn't have that. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't have that connection yet. Would you agree? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. I there's a connection there that we can't understand.
Yeah.
But I kind of love that too, because I love what fathers get to do too. I'm like, okay, like point in case, you know, our firstborn, first time, like, I'm like, oh my gosh, we need to go get him. We were doing some of the stuff where we're like, let's just give him a minute, see if he can, you know, soothe himself to sleep. And I'm like, he has been crying for like 15 minutes. It's so bad. And Paul's like, I have a timer on. It's been 3 minutes. He's going to be. And it's like little things like that where you need the both and. And so I'm super grateful for that too.
Yeah, that's funny. So our fourth, we brought him home from the hospital and he's inconsolable, keeps crying. And Priscilla like walks into a room in which I'm putting him in a car seat. I mean, we're 2 hours home from the hospital. She's like, whoa, what are you doing? What are you doing? You can't just, and I was like, Priscilla, this is our fourth child.
Oh my gosh.
Fine.
I know how to do this.
And what's neat is I drove we were, you know, still living in West Ashley. I drove all the way to Folly Beach. He fell asleep and I took him out of his car seat. I had a windbreaker on. I put him under my windbreaker, zipped it up, and I walked the pier, and he would make little noises, and people would be like, but the funniest thing is I've got the most precious picture of me holding Waylon because some drunk woman came up to me and said, that is the sweetest thing I've ever, can I take a picture? And I was like, yes, if you also take one with my phone. So I have a great picture.
Funny.
I'm thankful for that drunk woman that came by because I wouldn't have had the picture.
Yeah, this is a sweet moment.
That's funny what you were saying, though, about kids and their moms, because I'm very close to all of my kids, and yet we'll all be in the same room, and they're like, Mom, so-and-so said such and such, or I got an A on. I'm like, I care too.
I'm right here.
I'd love to know.
You know, what's funny about that is, you know, and obviously every kid's different, and girls are different, but we're in a season right now where after like, so my boys, when this airs, my boys are 17 years old, and they're seniors in high school, and I would say for most of their lives have obviously have shared what you would say typical, like they talk to mom more than they talk to dad. But man, in this season, we're in a season right now where they're talking to me more. It's funny to watch Angie squirm a little bit. She doesn't like it.
Oh yeah.
No, she's great with it.
Yeah.
In fact, I think she loves it. And but it's just been cool to see. We're in a little bit of a different season, and it's just a sweet season to be in.
Yep.
Where the boys are.
All right, so you have two 17-year-old twin boys, a 14-year-old little brother for them, or 15? How old is he?
15.
And then you have Claire, who's how many years younger than the 15-year-old?
She's 4 years younger, so she's 11.
11. All right, give us your
She's
rundown.
about to be 12.
Okay.
Start at the top.
Yep. So at the top, when this airs, my eldest will be 19, and then my second born 17, my third 16, and my fourth almost 12.
Gotcha. And people need to go check out Coffee with Andi. First of all, it's a great podcast, but if you just want to fast forward to the credits, your son has the cutest voice.
And gotta get him in here.
Oh my! I would. Sold.
He's so much fun.
Sold.
And he'll just like chat like
and does he have a Southern twang? It sounds Southern.
Okay, he was born in Brooklyn. Born and raised in Brooklyn. And this kid, we moved down here, he picks up. And I'm like, what is happening?
How old is he? Which one is he?
He's the youngest, 12. Almost 12. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, he has the cutest voice. All right, so let me ask y'all,
Oh, hold on. You didn't name yours.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. So 18 and 16-year-old girls, and then 14 and 12-year-old boys.
So you will have a freshman in college.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Andy's experienced something that you and I have not experienced, and I want to get to
ask that question. We definitely have to talk about it.
Yep.
But I forgot to say, mine's boy, boy, girl, boy. That's what I've
boy,
got too.
girl, boy.
Boy, boy, girl, boy.
Yeah. Well, let me just go ahead and ask. One of the last times I podcasted with you, it was fresh off of dropping your son off.
And we talked about grief.
Yeah. Let me ask you right now, is it easier? Please say yes.
Actually, I will tell you the truth. Yes.
Yes. So you get used to it. That's what I've heard.
You get used to it, and we're watching him thrive, which is like great and annoying all at the same time. Great because that is what you want for your kids, and annoying because I was hoping you'd be like, I've got to come back down. But even if you move back down, I'd be like, you can't live here anymore. I know that sounds really funny, but I'd be like, let me get you a roommate, because there's a part of him that had separated. But he is thriving. He's doing so well. Every time he comes to visit or we see him, though, it still is like I cry every time I say goodbye. But then we've gotten really good at planning when the next time is, because he's not your stereotypical either. He didn't go to college. He chose to do a gap year, and now he has got a sales job. He's starting a business, and he's like my serial entrepreneur. So he's like really thriving, and he's doing well, and he's going to the church that we planted in New York City.
Oh, wow.
And it's just kind of beautiful. I don't know if it says forever, but it does get easier in the sense of watching him thrive. And I love what you said about Paul has like been intentionally doing long distance discipleship with him. They're reading this book, Fathered by God, but they've been going through all these different books. And even that, their connection now, like he'll call me for certain things, but I love like the formation and the different things that are happening with his father in this season too, because he needs him in this warrior stage that he's in, like figuring out like, where do I belong? And it's really cool. So yes, I don't cry every night anymore. It's great.
So Chip Judd, we talk about him a good bit.
I've never heard of him.
Yeah. Real quick, I was just editing a podcast that he was on. Why does he say human? There's a lot of people that say human instead of human. I don't know if he ever uses the H sound. It's
just for every word or just that word?
Seems like it. Do you know what I'm talking about? Human?
Yeah.
Let's test him. Let's pull out some words from him where he has to start with an H and just see what happens.
Yeah.
It's just weird.
Yeah, it is. I wonder if it's like people in Buffalo. I don't know. Anyway, I'll say most of you know who he is, but he's also the guy that says daggum things that we know he's right. And then we're like, but how? And here's the big one. And Priscilla and I have talked about this so often. He said, so this is a very good general statement about all people and all of our interactions with people that we love and care about. But this is where it gets the toughest, is with our kids. He says that even with our kids, we have to learn as parents how to care deeply without carrying. And I'm like, how with our kids? Like how? And so I want to ask y'all, how do y'all think y'all have done? And I will say, I don't think that I have grown in this area until about 15 years into parenting. So that's literally in the last 3 years, I've experienced growth in this area. Before that, it was a constant struggle.
Give me an example.
So if Rosa gets her heart shattered by her best friend who turned on her, I can be there. I can care deeply. I can say, I'm here for you. I'll stay up all night with you, but I can't carry her pain.
Gotcha. So you're saying in its before, in an unhealthy way, you would have carried that pain.
Oh yeah, it would have wrecked me.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big thing is you can't let stuff wreck you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's naturally going to happen, but I've got 4 kids. What if they're all going through something tough and I let them all affect me at such a deep way? Then probably not going to be the best parent.
So I want to answer the question and touch on that too, because it goes into a few different things. With one of our kids, it was so interesting. Out of all 4 of them, we had one that kept getting bullied. And what was really interesting is we have always talked about our kids, about advocating for themselves, speaking up for themselves, not going silent. Heart connection is a huge thing for us. We're like, always tell us what's going on. But I would notice with this one child in particular, when they were off, I'm like, this kid's off right now. And I'd ask, I'd poke, what's going on with you? And then usually the burst would come forth and I would say, okay, you are empowered. Tomorrow I will send an email, but you are empowered to go talk to your teacher and advocate for yourself. I'll tell you, every single time this particular kid did that, he would stand up for himself, go to the teacher, have hard conversations with those that had bullied him, and everything changed. So now this is younger. So like younger kiddos, but
well, let me make a quick interjection. As opposed to you going to the school and handling it, that's great. That's great.
I would shoot an email to the teacher, but I would always say, "You go in."
That's really good.
And you are powerful. You can go in and have this conversation.
You had to suppress the mother bear because you wanted to go.
Oh,
boom,
well, again, murder was in my heart. I know that. I know what Jesus says about that in the Sermon on the Mount. So,
didn't you love hearing cute Andy just say murders in my heart?
So I think with that, for us as parents, because there's going to be a lot of parents listening, maybe even teenagers too, it's like the one thing the enemy wants is for our children to go silent, to carry the shame, the burden, the fear of if I speak up, it'll get worse. Maybe it will, but that you won't spiral into a different direction every time something's brought out into the light. So that was a balance for me when it came, to care deeply without carrying. I definitely carried it in prayer and intercession over my children, but I empowered them to make choices. The other two things I want to touch on with the caring deeply without carrying is I've noticed that let them learn from their mistakes and grow through their pain. Because, again, I'm just going to say this. We have to be careful that we don't become enabling parents, that we're not the parents that when they make a mistake, we carry all of the mistakes for them. Oh, I'll finish your assignment for you. I'll call the teacher. I'm like, well, you didn't finish your assignment. You get an F. That's your problem. That's part of my parenting that I've always done. I had one of my kids once. He would not completely show up in gym class the way he was supposed to, and he was getting bad grades. He's like, can you talk to the gym teacher? I was like, you want your mom to talk to your male gym teacher? Let me tell you how this is going to go. Yeah. I was like, you're going to take the grade and you're going to so it was like those moments. And even in their pain, like maneuvering that stuff through, I sob while I hold them. I can't help that. But I also try. It's always about how do I empower them to move through this and own their life.
Yeah. It's such a fine line though, right? Because there are going to be times as parents where we watch our kids making decisions or on the verge of making decisions that we know they can't grasp the consequences of.
That.
Life-altering decisions. And it's really hard to figure out, there's sometimes you have to let them make the mistakes, but then there's also
the big life-altering ones.
We got to be able to step in and go, you don't understand the decision you're about to make.
Yes,
and
100%.
I'm not going to, I don't know. It's such a fine line. It's a hard thing to figure out as parents.
And this is a question for you guys as well, because for me, I'm like, I mean, this is just me standing back and noticing the different ages and stages where there's more of like, you're like, I am giving you your boundaries right now. You need to learn. I don't care if you hate me. This is a no. And I will explain it the best that I can. But even if your frontal lobe that's not fully formed doesn't understand why I'm doing what I'm doing, I know this is a wise decision for you. And then you start to realize at a certain time, you become more of a wisdom guide that helps them steward their life.
100%.
And I think it's like that. Yeah. It's like knowing the difference between, because even with my eldest who has moved back, you better believe we had some tearful conversations where I was like, with A, B, and C, which I will not divulge here, where I'm like, I don't believe that's the best option for you. Yeah. I don't know if, does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
And that stuff's hard.
Yeah. 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 I've heard it said this way, and I've always thought this is a great rule of thumb is when you have a newborn, you're basically doing everything. Yes. And then as they get older, I mean, they need you hold my hand in the parking lot.
That's right.
You don't talk, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And the goal of parents is as the kids get older, we want to have more influence because we're going to have less control.
Yes.
And obviously, when the kids move out, we have almost we don't have any control other than what they give us.
Yeah.
And so that's what we need to be working on. Like my oldest, it's not the right way necessarily, but we are trying to treat her as if this is her year on her own, so that not only can she make mistakes and still have this home, but it's our time to just influence, not control. And obviously there's some, exceptions there, but I want my kids to want to be influenced at some point. What's the point of controlling?
But I love that. I love that example you just gave, Joey, that picture of from newborn and just development, because there are certain, there are certain lessons.
Did you just compliment me?
Did. You're brilliant.
Dang, thanks,
You're
Roy.
brilliant, dude.
Oh, thanks, man.
Hope I'm like you when I grow up. There are certainly lessons that I'm willing to let my kids learn on their own.
Yeah.
But there are certain things, no, I'm not willing to like. So you talked about am I going to let my kid learn the lesson of not stepping in front of a car by stepping in front of a car? No.
Yeah.
Right? Like there are certain things I'm willing to. There's a certain level of pain that I'm willing to allow them to experience because of just the natural consequences of their decisions.
Totally.
But there's certain consequences. I'm not only as a parent but as a human being. I wouldn't let anybody make that right. Willfully make that decision. And so there's no point at which they're going to grow out of me to a certain degree, still just protecting them from certain things and being willing to step in, as I would for any other individual, any friend, any adult, any whatever.
I 100% agree with that. And that is like that needing that discernment to know the difference, and then like paying attention to that as a parent when your gut goes, no, and like have the conversation and realize, like, even if you hate this, like, I'm going to put these guardrails up for you right now because it matters, and you can throw a tantrum, and I'm okay with that.
Yep. Yeah. I think what's been really hard for me to wrap my mind around and accept is there's a certain, like, I do think that human beings can live a life of just not being teachable and never really growing and maturing. But I know you two and I know myself, and we have tried to grow through the years and open our hearts up to being taught and discipled. And there is some sort of growth that cannot be acquired any other way but time. And we're talking decades.
100%.
And it's like there's so much stuff where it's just like, I have a better perspective, but if I say it to you, it's white noise because you don't have the time invested in life to even get what I'm saying.
Those
and it's so hard.
conversations with your kids, I remember sitting on my bed with one of my kids and I was like, I'm going to wring your neck. Because they're like, well, the words came out of this one's mouth that was like, well, when I'm a parent, I'm not going to parent this way. And I tried to not cackle in his face. I was like, oh my gosh. But it's those moments where, again, I'm making this decision for you because even though you wouldn't parent this way, we'll see.
Yep. I have thought about this often, and I'm curious what y'all think. And I think, would we all agree that our generation of parenting kind of ushered in the perfectionist mentality? Like, it doesn't seem like our parents really, you know what I'm saying? Like we just have, it's like in our head, if we're not perfect, then we're dropping the ball. And I think we've all learned that's not the case now, but at least for me early on, it was something that I struggled with. But what I can't understand, it seems like, we've talked about the heart connections that we have with our kids. It seems like there's some innate aspect of being a parent where love is so connected. And I'll just give one example. I mean, you could go one extreme and like parents that send their kids off to human trafficking for money. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't understand what is the disconnect. I understand sin implications and just being so far away from God that maybe I can't relate to that sort of thing. But I'll give you a more practical example. My grandfather's passed away, so I'll talk. Are you talking behind someone's back if they're dead? I guess You're talking, how would you say that?
No.
I'm not talking behind his back. He's dead.
You're talking over his dead body.
Oh, I love it. Grandpa, I'm talking over your dead body. All right, I love my grandpa, but so I'll say this. He did very hurtful things to his family, but he was born in 1918. His dad died in 1918 in the flu epidemic. He was 8 years old when his mother passed away. So he went to his uncle's house. Once his cousins became of age, his uncle thought it was inappropriate for him to live in a house where his cousins were hitting adolescence. And so he actually is sent off to an orphanage. He asks his uncle, hey, I'm embarrassed. I live in Charleston. Please don't send me to an orphanage in Charleston because people know that I have family here. So got sent off to, then he goes off to World War II. And this is really crazy. I asked him one time, I said, Grandpa, did you ever have to kill anybody? And he paused and he looked at me and he said, yes, son. He said, I'm not proud of it, but I had to do it. And he said, hand-to-hand combat. Oh, yeah. And then my grandma looked at me and she was like, I never knew that. So anyway, so that's kind of his background. Of course, he was rough around the edges, but I don't understand this. My dad told me that he remembers being a 7-year-old, being out on the baseball field, all the parents are out there, all of his peers are out there, and there's we call it a pop fly, right? Mm-hmm. And he misses it, and his father yells Butterfingers. And it's not in a joke, it's funny, but that was scarring to a 7-year-old for your father who's supposed to have your back, humiliate you in front of your peers and in front of other parents. I don't understand how that wouldn't break your, if you did something like that, it would break your heart and you would immediately repent to your kids, say, I'm sorry, I don't know what I got. I don't understand what's the disconnect, how parents can be like that. And I know that's just, what are you laughing at?
I feel like I have to dismiss myself from the podcast at this moment.
Oh, have you yelled Butterfingers to one of your kids?
I've done, listen, golly.
You didn't know what
Grandpa
you were opening up.
Listen, and oh man.
We got some confession time going?
Oh, big time. Oh, gosh. I have...
Me and Andy will be your priests.
So I don't know if I can't remember if I've said this in front of you recently. So I've been out of... I coached my kids all the way growing up. We played sports and coached my kids growing up, and I've been out now for a year. I've not coached my boys for the last year. You want to know why my relationship with my boys is at an all-time high? It's because I'm not coaching anymore.
Because you're not coaching them.
I'm embarrassed at some of the ways that I reacted and responded as a coach and as a and I'll say this is for me. Trust me, I've thought a lot about this. It wasn't just dad to player to son, to child. It was coach to child. And I let the pressures of that create in me somebody that I was often not proud. I mean, in hindsight, yeah, I've done a lot of things on the baseball field that I'm not proud of, and treated my kids in ways that I'm super embarrassed about. And I've realized I am a way better father when I am not coaching my kids.
Yeah.
And so, it's funny again. The boys aren't playing baseball these days; they're playing golf, and which is something that we love to do together. And again, whether it's I describe this season we're in, I don't know. Maybe it's just maturity, but I think it has more to do with this, and that is because I'm not their coach now. Like I said, one of my boys, one of them in particular, will come home in the evenings, and he's ready to tell me every shot on the golf course. Like they practice every afternoon. He's ready to walk me through his entire round, and when we were playing baseball, when we'd come in from baseball games.
Separate.
We didn't talk. We didn't talk about the game. We didn't talk about whatever. I mean, we did to some extent, but I'm just saying it's like, and so anyway, so.
No, I appreciate you sharing that.
So I'm glad that you can't understand.
Roy's like, totally understand.
I'm starting to crawl under the table as you're describing that. And
I didn't mean to do that. So what, I mean, have y'all pondered this? Like, what what happens? Is it, I mean, you go the demonic route and just say purely work of the enemy? And I understand that hurt people. I understand that typically people who abuse their kids were abused themselves. It doesn't even connect to be able to live consistently in a way where you are causing harm to your kids in an abusive way. Like, I don't see how, with how I feel about my kids, I can't see how that wouldn't be crushing for anyone. But I guess you just get so...
Well, can I speak to that?
Please.
I love that you shared about your grandfather, because even if you look generationally, like, we only have a certain view, right, of a slice of time that we're allowed to be here on the planet breathing. And I think about my grandparents who fought in World War II as well. Baby boomers got married, moments after they got back from war, had my dad. My dad was raised by people who were in close combat as well, saw the most terrifying things, and had trauma from their own childhood. And it wasn't a thing to talk about those things. PTSD was not talked about. There was no help there. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Even for my own father, who, was raised in that environment, basically raised himself with 2 alcoholic parents, was out of the household the whole time. Then he goes to Vietnam, and same thing. He was in combat. He did kill people. He knows that he did. He saw it. And only literally recently is he going to the VA to bring that stuff up. He has stuffed it his whole life. Dang. And so this is what I'm saying. And I grew up with an angry, distant father. And he's such a tender, loving man. This is the crazy thing, is my dad is amazing. We have this beautiful relationship now. We have for quite a long time, actually. But I think for him, his frustration in raising us, so then, because now you're talking about our generation, right? So every generation looks at the one before and goes, okay, how do I do better, or say things like, I'll never parent that way, or, all of those things that we do. And now we have a totally different generation. I think when you're saying, is it demonic? Is it A, B, and C? I mean, again, we've talked about this before on other podcasts, Joey, but we are body, soul, and spirit. If we stuff our trauma, it stores up in our body. If there are spiritual aspects generationally that definitely take place in our life, if we don't deal with them and take authority over them, there are certain things where I think about how when I gave birth to my kids and was going through my own trauma, I had 3 kids under the age of 3.
Without an epidural.
Without an epidural. I love natural birth. I am hardcore. I'm a hippie. It's from my mom. But I think about those things and I'm like, our children actually give us this opportunity to heal and become better and more like Christ because they trigger us.
Yeah.
In every single way. And I actually love that you shared your story, because I think that'll give hope to parents too. And I'm sure that there's reasons why standing in the coaching position with your sons brought something out in you and now it doesn't. We're just human beings that are trying to figure out how to be more like Christ as we raise our kids. Some of us just have had more help along the way, or resources, or understanding. And I think that that's where I would have been able to forgive and give grace to my parents for their mistakes and not hold them to account, because I'm like, they really were doing their best with all the trauma they went through. And my kids now, who remember the trauma from when they were little, when I was not doing well, all see me now and go, Mom, we love you and are so proud of you. We see how much you change and go after God. And I'm like, that's all we can do, is continually change, so that they look at us and go, oh, Jesus is real. He really does change lives, including my mom and dad.
Amen. Right.
So,
right. As you were saying that, it's extremely helpful, because one thing that occurred to me is the number of people who say, I believe you, Joey. I just don't understand what depression feels like.
Yeah.
So it would make complete sense for me not to understand how someone can do such and such to their child, because maybe I have processed what they weren't able to process, or I didn't go through what they went through. And so I don't have the capability to relate from a personal perspective. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you go.
No, please.
No, I was just going to say about my dad. I think about my dad and some of the stuff he's shared because of what he's going through now. So he even sat out on the porch with us last time he was here, me, Paul, and Mom and Dad, and he just wept. sharing some of the stuff that he saw in combat because he's allowing himself to heal.
Wow.
And so I go, think about like this tender-hearted warrior that gets placed in the middle of something. In a war, when he comes back, he's spit on, people turn their backs on him at the airport. There's no honor for him. They don't even call it the Vietnam War until years later, so they don't have to care for you. The country says, go ahead and go on our front lines, but we're not going to take care of you when you get back. Do you know what I mean? So there's a lot to process there. And so when I watch him, I know it sounds funny as his daughter, I'm like, Dad, I'm so proud of you. Like watching you heal when you could just say, I'm too old. Like it's too hard. Does that make sense?
It does.
So parenting... anyways, it never ends.
Yeah. And I would say it's relatively uncommon for our parents' generation to even be open to therapy and talking things out.
Yeah. So going back to the coaching thing for a second, because I've analyzed this a lot of ways. One of the things I realized for me is that I allowed my identity as a coach to be wrapped up in the way that my personal kids performed on the baseball field.
That's so insightful, though.
So if my kids had a bad game, I felt like a failure as a coach, and I felt like other people saw me as a failure of his own kids. His own kids can't even, like he can't even teach his own kids how to play the game, right?
Wow,
which is stupid. So stupid. I mean, so silly and unhealthy. But now let's take that out to a broader perspective. I think that's the mistake that we make a lot of time as parents.
Overall.
Totally. I think that we watch our kids mess up, fail, whatever, and we too personalize the fact that we feel like failures as a parent simply because our kids are making poor decisions. The truth is we do the best we can to shepherd them and to guide them. But at the end of the day, they're going to make decisions that are contrary to what we've taught and to what we've shepherded. And
that's so hard, but I mean, you're right.
That's hard. And so the way that we respond when they do make bad decisions, when they do go down roads, like, can we just stop for a moment and ask ourselves, is this more about me?
That's good.
And what I'm worried about other people thinking about me and what other people, or am I really worried about, is this really about my son or daughter and what's best for them? And our response changes when we can get out of the way and not make it about us.
Yeah.
Who cares what,
It's true though. I'm glad you shared that. And because I think that there's even people that are going to be listening or watching going, I was that coach, help. And ultimately, isn't that funny? We are kind of coaches even as parents. So overall perspective, looking at it like that is really helpful.
All right. So deep theological question. Then Roy, did you do your homework? I know Andi did her homework. Did you bring to the table three? Okay, cool. So each of us, we're going to share the top 3 things, or maybe the first 3 things we thought of that could be possible.
I was like, that's a lot of pressure.
Possibly help others as parents. But I wanted to ask, how do you guys frame up prayer for your kids with free will and consideration? And I know you and I have talked about prayer.
Oh, I need to hear what you guys talk about. I'm so curious now.
Wow. I wanted to hear Andi because I know Roy and I are speechless when it comes to prayer. I don't know. I think that it is a tough one because I believe in prayer, but I think that in my current journey, I've told Roy this, that the only component of prayer that I can actually really understand is how it benefits my relationship with God. The reason why I'm in more of a confused season of prayer is just, the number of times we've prayed, and did all the right things, and then, somebody passed away and that sort of thing. So I think when it comes to my kids, I pray for them, and I believe that there is some sort of strength, there's some sort of benefit, but I don't know how I feel about praying for very specific things to happen one way or another. I think I would probably I would probably back up and be like, Lord, I'm praying for their hearts. I'm praying for them to be able to persevere. I'm praying for strength. But when it comes to, Lord, I pray that such and such I don't know how I feel about that.
Oh, I love that. Interesting.
Shocked. Can't believe you would say that.
Okay, so wait.
And I'll give you an example. And this is, I totally understand people's perspective. Now, I have kind of I don't know. I see Proverbs as very powerful stuff. It's still poetry. And there are some Proverbs that you could say on paper conflict with each other, but not when you take in consideration it's phrases and truths and it's done in a very poetic way. So when people claim as a promise, teach your kids and if they go astray, they'll come back. I don't know if that's a promise in the sense of if you do that, 2 + 2 = 4. It is a general principle that, hey, there is importance and there is good out of teaching your kid because they'll always remember it. But I've seen people claim that as a promise, and I don't know if it was intended that way.
I think everything has raise your kids up in the way that they should go and they won't depart from it. Everything is conditional. You read the word of God, even a prophetic word is usually conditional. I can be like, I prophesy, Joey, that you will be A, B, and C, and honestly, you probably have to do something about that. It's not like, bless me, God, make it happen.
That's great.
But I think even with people sometimes claim raise your kids up in the way that they should go and they won't depart from it after it's too late and they haven't raised them up in the way they should go. So I'm just saying, there are certain principles from birth onwards that you got to kind of steward and put in. And then, yes, your kids do have free will, but we do have power and authority as parents to pray over them. So your question is specifically about prayer and praying over our children, right? Mm-hmm. So I'll tell you a couple things we do. And then I'm so curious what you guys think about it.
I shared mine as more confusing.
And I've already made myself look bad enough today, so I'm done.
No, you did not make yourself look bad.
Roy's like, don't tap into my prayer life for my kids.
Is you just kind of had a public confessional and repentance, and that might be helpful for some people to admit some things in their lives. So, for our kids, my husband and I, once a week when we're both in town and it works in that, our goal is to wake up and at least pray an hour together once a week together out loud. And so we do that. And a lot of times we'll have a list of different things that we're either contending for, believing for, but say our kids. I pray for their marriages. I don't pray for specific names or people. I pray for specific types of people with character that love God, that, you know what I mean? So I'm praying for characteristics of a person where I'm I know my kid and I know what they need to lock and load and walk in the fullness of their potential on earth. So that's what I pray. We pray that over them, for their marriages, for
and just for some fun theology, then in theory you are praying, and I don't mean in a bad way, against their free will, because their free will, they could choose a very unhealthy spouse or a very healthy spouse. So you're praying some sort of control.
No, technically I'm not praying against their free will. I am prophesying and declaring what I believe is for them, and they do have free will. That doesn't bother me. I'm I hope that these prayers come to fruition.
Gotcha. And they would freely choose this type of person.
Gotcha.
Well, but I don't again, it is free will because I don't have a name. And here's the deal too, is I was almost married twice before Paul. Mm-hmm. And the first one, I would have been divorced already. The second one, I would have been extremely unhappy and locked into a life that I just was not supposed to live in. But I had a free will for both of those. And even when Paul and my mom was praying for me, for my spouse. She saw a vision of two people coming together on mission. She didn't know who it was, didn't know. She's like, you're just going to be on mission. You'll be side by side with this man. He will see you and know you. This is all true. And I remember I broke up with Paul. And I freaked out and I was like, God, tell me, am I supposed to be married to him? And I remember a week later, I was in my room praying and the Lord said, I'm not going to tell you whether you should marry him or not. You're not going to get a yes or no from me. The Spirit of the Lord said, write down what you love about him. I wrote a list. I'm weeping, 6 pages long. And the Lord goes, is that good enough for you? I had a choice.
Yeah.
And so I think, again, prayer over your kids. So constantly praying for them and their calling. For right now with Zeke in New York City, I'm just praying that he encounters God for himself and he hears for God for himself. Mm-hmm. And he does. Does that make sense?
No, it does.
So it's and when my kids were little, my biggest prayer was that they would encounter and know the love of God. I'd pray over them every single night out loud so they heard it. Pray the armor of God on them. They're all dreamers. Pray over their sleep. And then I would pray over them that they would just be wrapped in and understand how deeply loved by God they were.
Yeah.
So that it wasn't like mom and dad's like, relationship with God, but they would like radically know him for themselves. All of those are in line with the word.
Yeah. Oh, and just
still,
so you know, I'm not denigrating that approach at all. I'm thinking from a perspective.
Like you were.
What's that?
Sounded like you were.
Like if I have an adult kid who is struggling with alcohol, I have no problem with saying, "Hey, however this sounds, I don't know, but ultimately I am praying against their free will because I don't want them to choose alcohol." You know what I'm saying?
You want to break the addiction over them.
Exactly.
You want that?
I want God to come in and overpower that addiction. You know what I'm saying?
Can I be honest? That's what God can do. Like we do have a will to choose to submit to God, but he can break things off our life and do that in an instant. So yes, I get what you're saying, but free will is the big line for you that you're like toiling
it's just
over
interesting talk.
I'm like,
It's just interesting.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Radio silence.
You smiling condescendingly?
Yes.
Amen.
I just like to smile.
All right.
It's my best trait.
All right.
Clearly,
smiling your favorite.
My coaching and parenting isn't my best trait. So
stop it. Stop saying that. That's not true.
Yeah, come on, Roy.
No, I'm kidding.
So you're not perfect parent? I didn't know that.
What?
Oh my gosh.
We were hoping the perfect parent seat was right here.
I am growing in sanctification every day.
Yeah.
Amen.
All right. Well, I'm gonna run down my 3. What came to mind. One of them is something that you can always do, whether you're depleted with your energy and maybe don't even have the fortitude to cook dinner, for crying out loud. You can always be generous with your words. It's so easy to tell your kid what they mean to you. And nowadays, my gosh, I'll just think of, I'm going to just text my kids.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just so easy to affirm and encourage. Another one is anger. I get it. It is something that we toil with, but I feel for me, the more that I'm angry, the less parenting that I'm doing because I'm more fixed in my anger, which does basically my calling is to guide them. How can I really guide them if I am, consumed with anger? And I was telling Andi before we started, most of the things that I'm going to get angry about is due to their immaturity. What do I expect? They're kids. Yeah. They're immature. So, and then the third one for me is I can be very self-critical. And once God freed me from my perfectionism, I for sure am a better parent. For sure. Awesome. There's a different aura about me, but different demeanor. It's more fun. And it's my first go around a parent. So of course I'm not going to be perfect, but it really is I'm happier as a parent, because I'm not so locked in on fear and am I messing them up? And that's my 3.
That's really good.
That's good. You want to go next?
You want me to? You want me to go?
Yeah.
All right. For me, I know this sounds like super old school, but we learned, because we had so many kids so close together, we were pastoring in New York City. It was kind of wild. And building out the team as we went, we had to read the Love Languages book and really figure out what connected with our kids.
Ooh, I like that.
Because we knew that we needed to deeply stay heart connected with our children no matter what. We want to stay close to them no matter what they're going through, that we're the first people that they talk to. And that has beautifully been the case, but we fought for it. And I think a lot of that had to do with figuring out what caused them to feel loved. Now, my eldest 3 are all quality time. My youngest is gifts, which is so funny. But quality time, you realize you have to schedule in weekly connection time. So we'd go to the diner, we'd go on a walk, we'd go to the park and play, even if it was just for an hour. So I would say find out what makes your kids tick. And honestly, usually how they want to be loved will sometimes not really be what you want to do, but we know that through marriage and relationships, that's not what love is about. But if you want to maintain that heart connection, The second thing would be, and I was big on this and my kids couldn't stand me for it. And a lot of people might disagree on this and I'm totally okay with that. But maybe it was because of the generation we grew up in, is I am high on discipleship and low on devices. So my kids, funnily enough, like my eldest would be more of like the TikTok generation, loves it, loves social media, all of that. My middle two are like old people and they're like, why would we put our lives out for other people to see? That's weird. And then my youngest wants to be a famous YouTuber. So, I think just going, okay, how do we intentionally disciple our kids at home and not let the devices disciple them? Because they are being shaped by their devices right now. So this may be a warning wake-up call to some of you parents out there. Pay attention to how much time you give your kids. And if you pull it back, they're going to be angry at you. But make it intentional time for connection. Like, we don't have phones at the table. There's a lot of different things we've done to make sure that we look our kids in the eyes. We teach them. I said, you guys are going to get jobs in the future because you know how to have an adult conversation and look somebody in the eye and not pick up your phone. So that was a big one. And then the last one is just let them make you better. And I think that's the biggest thing I've learned. And I kind of touched on that already, but I really learned how to be good at not just apologizing, but repenting and doing something different. And so that was the thing too, is I realized over the years, my kids have seen change, not just, I'm no longer angry mom. I mean, I'm fiery mom, but they used to be terrified of me and now they're not. And anger is not my first response anymore either. So I think let them change you. Go, why is that coming out of me? And what do I need to do to apologize, make amends, reconnect with my children, and then live differently? So those would be the top three. Hopefully they're the right order, or the first three.
We don't even need yours anymore, Roy. We're good. We're good.
Oh man, number one, don't play sports. Sort of joking, sort of not joking. Golly, youth sports are they're rough on family these days. And
they take up a lot of time, don't they?
They do, and they shape so much. Anyway, I have a love-hate relationship with youth sports these days. I would say number one, in that vein, quit living your life through your kids.
Oof. Mic drop. I'm glad you kept talking.
Let them.
Really good.
Me too. After all.
I think so many of us are, again, whether it's in a funny sense, we could, not as funny really, but whether it's on the sports field or whether it's in whatever, so many of us are living out our dreams and disappointments and whatever through our kids, and that's just not fair to them. So
good.
Let them be. Let them be their own selves and quit trying to make up for the things in our lives that whatever. Number two, you kind of said it right there, but so man, let me say this: parenting, nothing has caused me to understand God and how God sees me and how I see God more than parenting.
Wow.
Every single day, parenting informs both of those relationships. It makes me understand how God feels about me as a child of His in a way that I would have. I mean, like, again, you talked about like how can we love a human? I mean, I think you started this episode by talking about how we can love another human being and whatever. And I just say, like, understanding that as a dad makes me understand how much God must love us and me. But number two, then it also informs my relationship back to God. It helps me to see God in a way that I would have never. And so what I would say to that, the way that plays into my parenting is, number one, I'm aware that my kids' relationship and how they see God is so tied to what they experience and see in me. And number one, that scares me to death, right? Especially when I talk about some of the mistakes that I've made, right? But number two, it just challenges me every day. Mm-hmm. What do I want my kids to believe about God? Okay, then what should they experience in me? Because all of us, our experience of Father God is being shaped by the authority figures closest to us, mainly our parents. For many of us, our dads. And so for me, that's just a great accountability every day to remember, like, I'm shaping what my kids believe about God by how I parent them.
Right.
And I get that wrong a lot of days.
Yeah. And it goes back, though, to what Andy said as far as repenting with your kid, because that is when the distinction is made. I'm not perfect, so I have to do this. Because God never has to come to us and say, hey, I apologize for what I did. We do. So that's,
100%. I've gotten real comfortable telling my kids, I'm sorry I messed up. Like, shouldn't have said. Anyway, number 3, I would say, and it's going to sound almost contradictory to that, because I say that scares me, and that there's a seriousness to that. Number 2. Number 3 is to quit taking ourselves so seriously. Like, I have gotten caught up in thinking, like, we were ruining our kid, or our kids were never going to turn out right because of things that were going on when they were 5 years old. It's like, come on, like, seriously, they're way more resilient than that, and we're not gonna, their lives aren't going to be ruined because of a negative experience. And so, chill out, enjoy the ride. Right? It goes way too fast.
Oh my gosh.
All of that. We're those people now, guys. Take care of that little baby.
And yet
it goes
somehow,
so fast.
in spite of all of our stuff, man, I'm super proud of my kids.
Yes.
I'm super proud of how they've turned out.
They're pretty awesome.
They're
aren't
pretty
they?
awesome.
Yeah.
They're pretty awesome.
I like my humans too.
Yeah, me too.
Like, I like them.
I do too.
love them, but I just like them. I like hanging out with them.
Yep. All right. So if you guys think of something before we wrap up, while I'm telling a funny story, I want to hear a funny story, just anything that comes to mind. So we're sitting at the dinner table, and the kids are all really young. And so it was a legit question to say, hey, what kind of meat are we eating? So the 3 oldest, they were all astute enough to realize it's probably cow or pig. And so, Rosa's like, I think this is pig meat. And then Gwenny's like, cow. William's like, nah, pig. We get to Waylon, who's probably like 3 or 4, and he's like, elephant? Like, he was like, I guess we're just guessing animals.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing.
One of our favorite memories, videos, and videos are awesome, right? Pictures and videos, and I agree with your kids. I don't like to live my life on social media for everybody else, but man, I sure do love the memories that it provides for us. So I love just flipping through pictures and videos. And our favorite one in the house, one of our favorites is so we had 3 boys first. Twin boys, then a boy 19 months later. And so when we were finding out what number 4 was, it was for all of us, we had cupcakes made. And so the twins at this point, I don't know, the twins were like 4 or 5 years old. Cole was 3 years old. And so we had cupcakes made filled with the color icing. And so we have this, obviously on video. And so it was up to them to hurry up and eat, to get to the middle of the cupcakes. And so we were all like, and they were being so slow. It's like, would you hurry up and get to? And finally, one of them got to the middle, and it was pink on the inside. And Colin yells out, "I bit the girl!"
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh!
That's one of our favorites. So Claire, we got number 4, and Claire, our number 4 turned out to be the girl. And she was
You remember Andy Gill?
amazing, spoiled, rotten, all in the same.
You remember Andy Gill?
Oh yeah.
They had a big gender reveal party, and the daggum company that made the cake forgot to make it any color. So it was the worst humiliating thing for them, because they keep cutting, and it's just like yellow.
Oh
and
no!
We're all like,
oh no!
So then they finally have to just say, "It's a girl."
Oh my gosh! The stress of gender reveal parties.
I know.
Oh. Okay, can I share 2 really quickly? One of them you may not be able to air.
I'm going to tell y'all one that I can't air after.
Yeah. So the same thing, you just made me think of one when we had, 2 boys and a girl, and then Sam was like a gap after them. So we got a cake and we cut it open, and it's blue, and Finley turns and looks at us and cries her eyes out. She goes, "But I wanted a sister." Like, she was so angry. But then and she sobbed and sobbed. And then, an hour later, we're walking down the street in Brooklyn. We're going to pick something up. And I was like, "Hey, how you doing with, everything?" She goes, "I'm fine. I cried and now I'm good." And I was like, wow, we all need to learn from how you process so very quickly. The other one, though, is so funny. So Sam knows how to scare me. Like he can scare me and I will scream.
Is your youngest?
My youngest. Yeah. And so multiple times he had already scared me. I don't know why I wasn't waiting for it and I wasn't looking for it, but like terrified. Like everyone's laughing in the house because I'm so scared. So this one time he has not done it since. This was a few years ago. He was in my closet and I was in the shower and I came out with my towel on into my closet to get dressed into my closet. But no, he opens the door and it hits me on the head. He screams, hits it on the head. I yell because it hurt so bad and I was scared because he hit me. So I start crying and yelling and my towel dropped and he's standing there and he's like, oh my gosh. And he like ran out the door. He literally has never scared me since.
And he's never spoken since.
I'm too old for this. I was like, well, that'll teach you.
Oh man, that's good stuff. That's good stuff.
Terrifying.
You've been listening to the Things You Won't Hear on Sunday Seacoast podcast. In the show notes, you'll see a link to our Facebook group page. Also, we'd love for you to consider subscribing so you get these episodes downloaded right when they come out. Thanks so much for listening.